about them. Now, I was playing Whole Lotta Rosie and saying how sad it was we lost the member of AC/DC. Sarah Jarvis is here, by the way. AC/DC, your thing.
Not quite
you had to
my
be,
style.
Yeah, late 70s heavy metal.
Not quite.
But they are, I mean, incredible band. And the most tinnitus-inducing band probably you can think of. This is, for example, we played Whole Lotta Rosie in the last hour, but just have a listen to this when they play it live.
Exactly pretty. Exactly small. 239 you can say she got it all.
I mean, I've spoken to a couple of people who've been to AC/DC gigs. I wish I had, and I haven't. And they said that the actual noise level is higher than anything else. And I mentioned that because the lead singer, Brian Johnson, has been told that if he performs again live, he may become totally deaf. So he's had to come off the road. Our ears are easily damaged, regularly exposing ourselves to sounds over 85 decibels, which is the equivalent to a noisy pub, not only puts our hearing at risk, but can also cause tinnitus. And that's what we're talking about with Dr. Sarah today. It can be a fleeting annoyance, a ringing in the ears that lasts for a short while, maybe for a few hours after a particularly loud gig. The trouble is when it doesn't fade and you still got it. And joining us in our Norwich studio is Jono Heel, and that's your life, Jono.
Yeah, that's my background. I did music at school, played drums, bit of guitar, did a degree in music, played in bands. Fortunately, went on to play professionally for 15 years as an electric bass player, actually, standing next to drummers. A few shows at the BBC, but in my late 30s, I was aware of this ringing in my head, but stupidly I didn't think anything of it, possibly an occupational hazard. And usually after, say, 12, 24 hours after a gig, it went away, which was fine. And then I went away on holiday, and the ringing in my head didn't go away. Couldn't sleep for 2 weeks, nightmare. Had a terrible holiday. Came home, it carried on, so I was getting quite scared by this time. I went to an audiologist and had a hearing test, and he said, yes, Mr. Heel, you have classic noise-induced hearing loss. Have you worked in the aircraft industry? So I said, no, music industry. And he was like, well, why didn't you wear any earplugs? And I was like, earplugs? Well, I want to hear the music. I don't want to block it out. And I spoke to another muso friend at the time who said, you know, Jono, you do realise that music-induced tinnitus is 100% preventable. And of course nowadays you can buy earplugs, especially for listening or playing music.
That's why I was a little bit surprised by the Brian Johnson news, Jono, because when you see him on stage, he has those moulded earplugs, which means you can supposedly completely control what's going into your ears.
Yeah, you can with in-ear monitors. That's the beauty. I mean, more bands are using in-ear monitors on stage, which is great. So you control the sound to your ear, but it's, you know, they still have a lot of sound from the back line or from the drum kit. I mean, you take just an acoustic drum kit being played, not even sort of heavy metal, you know, if you like, you're looking at probably between 94 and 97 decibels. Now, about 97 dB, you've got around, which I know this now, I wish I knew this 25 years ago, you've probably got around 30 minutes safe exposure time before you start damaging the sensory hair cells in the cochlea. So, which nobody told me this, you know.
Which you didn't come to see me.
No,
told
there
you.
we are.
So you're 50, right? So you were doing
50,
this, what, 20 years?
Yeah.
Well, I'm 52. But I suppose it's a bit like smoking and all that. The advice came a little bit late.
Yeah.
Sarah?
I think, well, there's an element of that, but I also think there's a significant element that, of course, young people, I hate to say it, but, you know, when you're young, you're playing music. Hearing loss is what happens to old people, never going to happen to me. What is that? I hope I die before I get old. I think we do spend an awful lot of our time ignoring things. And frankly, can you really be honest and tell me that if you'd been given that advice, you'd have worn, you know, what at the time were not terribly sexy, probably over-ear headphones?
Sure.
Well, but they'd be in here, wouldn't they? But I suppose...
Well, but 20 years ago, they might not have been. That's the point.
Well, it's the same thing on firing ranges, Jono, isn't it? The young lads in the army, they're offered ear protectors. They say, I'm not using them. That'd be ridiculous. And actually, all of our ears are sensitive, and you discovered that in the worst way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, hearing protection has changed a lot. I mean, foam earplugs, which they hand out at music colleges, some music colleges, you know, an auditory block, but you can get hearing protection that, you know, attenuates the sound. So you can still hear the music, you can still feel it, experience it, but it just turns it down and increases your exposure time, which is great.
So what can you describe the sound you hear? That's the key question today.
Okay, well, I've got this, hopefully through the miracles of modern science, I've got this little app which is a tone generator. Now mine is a ringing, like a sine wave sort of tone, and it kind of matches the loss that I've got. So I'm just going to play this to you. It's about 8 kilohertz. So
It's interesting.
So I've got that.
I wouldn't like that
all the time.
I would not like that.
Interestingly, I've just taken my earplugs, my earphones off, so I can't hear it as
We
clearly.
might have to turn it off because that's going to really.
Yeah.
But hang on, if you play that and that's the sound you hear in your head, do the two cancel each other out? Or
Well, I mean, distracting the auditory information, it does help. It helps me. So during the day, if I'm working on the computer or whatever, I have the radio on in the background, just on a quiet level. Bedtime is more of a problem, especially if I'm a bit tired, stressed, or been driving a lot. Getting to sleep can be a bit of a problem. So listening to music, Baroque Val music is very good for me. Or listening, I did have these CDs that were like jungle sounds or wave noises, but it annoyed my wife. so
Sarah,
yeah,
what do you
it's a problem.
find when you get patients with this? What do you find is the best treatment?
Well, the answer is it very much depends on the patient, but I'm particularly interested in your case, Jono, that you were saying it bothered the wife, because these days you can get the British Tinnitus Association is really good. They've got all sorts of things online you can buy in pillow earphones, so they're just directed to you. And lots of my patients do find that very soothing white noise, like waves on a beach or jungle sounds. I have to say, I might be slightly worried about a panther leaping up from behind me or a macaw suddenly screeching.
Rainfall.
But yeah, rainfall or pebbles washing gently against each other on the beach, that sort of thing. But you're absolutely right. Pretty much everybody hears it much more when they're in a quiet environment, which is why so many people find that their sleep is disrupted. And it's one of the reasons that for about 1 in 100 people who have tinnitus, 1 in 100 of us, tinnitus is so distressing that it can lead to social isolation, it can lead to depression and so on.
I know you're involved with the British Tinnitus Association, Jono, and Help Musicians UK.
That's
and
right.
The Tinnitus Association can be reached on the website tinnitus.org.uk. Helpmusicians.org.uk as well is useful. I know you've tried loads of things, Jono, as well. So you probably tried speakers and the pillow, and you've tried CBT and yoga, and what else?
Tai Chi, it's good. Yeah, Tai Chi. I did local Tai Chi group. It sort of helps to focus the mind and body. So that's been really good. But yeah, it's more distracting the auditory information away from that ringing.
I was talking to a specialist about this a while back, Jono, and I said to her, can you not just operate? And she said, sometimes we will, if we look microscopically at the mechanism inside the ear, those sort of rods that receive the sound, they may be totally undamaged. And this is all going on in the mind. Is that right?
Well, well, Sarah will maybe explain this better, but it's a neurological experience. It's I don't know. I've had it explained to me at the tinnitus clinic in Ipswich that it's like the brain is turning up the gain or the volume, and it's where I've got a notch on those frequencies where my hearing's been damaged, which is interesting that the ringing I'm hearing is that kind of frequency. It kind of sits in that notch where the damage has been done.
I think it's really important, Jono, to stress for anybody who's listening that tinnitus is not a psychiatric condition. When people say it's all in the brain or it's all in your mind, really important that we remember this is a very real thing. Tinnitus is
like
any noise. Absolutely.
Because pain can be a product of the mind.
Well, it can, but interestingly, pain is very, very real. What happens, it's not necessarily a product of the mind. What will happen is that your body will become more or less sensitive to it. So, for instance, people who are depressed may be more affected by tinnitus, but that does not mean that it's not real.
Okay. Thank you very much to Jono Heel, who has tinnitus and got it from music. And we were conscious on radio stations, Sarah, that we've got headphones on and mine has turned so low. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. And I have to say, listening to that music, that AC/DC music, I have to say I'm very, very glad I was never into it. One of the interesting things you didn't mention, Jono, is that often tinnitus starts at about the time that you start to get hearing loss. So sometimes getting hearing aids will help with tinnitus as well.
Yeah. Now, so the friend of mine who went and had a bit of advice on tinnitus was expecting to have hearing loss. Here's the amazing thing. They put him in the booth and they said, your hearing's brilliant. He said, no, it can't be because I got a little bit of tinnitus. How does that make sense?
Well, the answer is that sometimes, or probably most often, I would say probably in the majority of cases, what we think is happening, at least in part, is that your brain is trying to make up for the fact it's creating its own noise, as Jono said, turning up the gain,
but that's where
to make up for the fact that it's not hearing so much from outside.
Yeah.
But that's not always the case.
Forgive me for sort of interviewing you like, we're on Newsnight, but we are then back with the brain, aren't we? You can't go in with a scalpel and cut out something in the cochlea. Something in the brain is malfunctioning, and therefore you think, well, will counselling cure it?
Well, interestingly, even though, if you think about it, if it's in the brain, multiple sclerosis is in the brain,
Sure.
and yet we never think of that as a psychiatric condition. So in exactly the same way, tinnitus is in the brain, but it's not a psychiatric condition. And yet, counselling CBT related, funnily enough, Jeremy, another condition where I can mention CBT, the best evidence for effective treatment is with a trained tinnitus specialist with treatments that include CBT because they help you to cope with it.
If you, for example, convince yourself that only really successful people hear a ringing in their ears, you then become more accommodating of it. Is that right? Is that how it works?
There are lots of things that they use. For instance, the fact that it doesn't necessarily get worse with time, how you understand it, how you can incorporate it into your life. Pain clinics do exactly the same thing. CBT there is not for a second suggesting that pain isn't real, but it's giving you counselling on how you can cope with it.
Love your thoughts about tinnitus. Thank you again, John O'Heal. Dr. Sarah Jarvis with us, talking about the ringing, the whistling, the warbling, whatever it is, the hiss in your ears.